In the heart of the Arabian desert, more than 1,400 years ago, a world stood divided, tribes at war, injustice everywhere, and faith lost in the sands. Then, in the city of Mecca, a man received a message that would forever change history. A message of unity, mercy, and truth, a call that rose from the silence of the night and echoed across empires. From one revelation began a movement that transformed hearts, reshaped civilizations, and challenged the greatest powers of its time. This is not just the story of religion, it is the story of revolution, of faith, and of the rise that changed the world forever. This is the beginning of Islam. In the vast, sun-scorched lands of the Arabian Peninsula, centuries before Islam, the world was divided by tribe, tradition, and a harsh struggle for survival. Endless deserts stretched between rocky mountains and fertile oases, where scattered tribes made their homes. It was a land of poetry and pride, where honor was as precious as water, and vengeance could last for generations. Yet within this world of chaos and conflict, a light was destined to rise, one that would change not only Arabia but the entire course of human history. Life in pre-Islamic Arabia. Before the revelation, Arabia was a world defined by its geography. The peninsula lay between three mighty civilizations, the Byzantine Empire to the northwest, the Persian Sasanian Empire to the northeast, and the Abyssinian Kingdom to the south. Each had its empires, laws, and religions, but Arabia stood apart, a vast crossroads that traders crossed, yet a land without a single ruler or unified law. Arabia was divided between the northern tribes who had some contact with Byzantium and Christianity, and the southern regions, influenced by ancient Yemen and the kingdoms of Saba and Himyar. The central region, the Hijaz, was home to Makkah and Yathrib, later Medina, cities that would one day become the cradle of Islam. Most Arabs lived by the tribal code, asabiyya, or loyalty to one's clan above all else. Each tribe had its own chief, poets, and warriors. They lived by the sword and survived through alliances, raids, and trade. There was no central authority, no uniting moral code beyond family pride and vengeance. If one member was harmed, the entire tribe rose to avenge him, and wars could continue for decades over a single insult. Yet despite this constant rivalry, Arabian culture had its brilliance. The Arabs were masters of language. Their poetry was revered like gold. Poets were historians, philosophers, and media all in one. Their verses described love, war, nature, and fate, and some poems were so admired that they were hung on the walls of the Kaaba in Makkah, the mu'allakat or hanging odes. Religions and beliefs before Islam. Spiritually, Arabia was a mosaic of beliefs. Most Arabs practiced polytheism, worshipping idols that they believed were intercessors with the divine. The Kaaba in Makkah, though originally built as tradition holds by Prophet Abraham, and his son Ismail, had become a center for idol worship. Inside and around it stood hundreds of idols, the most revered being Hubal, along with others like Lat, Uzza, and Manet. But not all Arabs worshipped idols. In the north and among some tribes, there were small communities of Jews and Christians, remnants of past migrations and missionary efforts. In southern Arabia, Judaism had taken root among some Himyarite kings. Others had converted to Christianity under Abyssinian influence. Yet many Arabs felt spiritually unsatisfied. Amidst these religions and idol cults, a few individuals, known as Hanifs, rejected all idols and sought to worship one God, the God of Abraham. They lived quietly, away from fame, but their yearning marked the first signs of a new spiritual dawn. The Kaaba in Makkah. Makkah was not the largest or richest city in Arabia, but it held the greatest spiritual and economic importance. It was located along major trade routes between Yemen and Syria. Every year, tribes gathered there for trade fairs and poetry contests, but most importantly for pilgrimage to the Kaaba. This pilgrimage was deeply rooted in Arabian tradition, though its true purpose had long been obscured by idolatry. The Quraysh tribe, guardians of the Kaaba, held immense prestige. They controlled the trade routes and the pilgrimage, earning both respect and wealth. Among the Quraysh were many clans, including Banu Hashim, a noble but not the richest family. It was into this lineage that the one destined to change history would be born. The social conditions. Pre-Islamic Arabia was a society of sharp contrasts. Tribal loyalty and bravery were valued, yet injustice and cruelty were widespread. The strong dominated the weak. Slavery was common. The poor were often left without protection and women had few rights. Some tribes practiced the horrific custom of burying infant daughters alive, out of shame or poverty. These were times of moral darkness, where material survival outweighed compassion. Drinking, gambling, and endless wars consumed the lives of many men. Yet even amid this harshness, there existed a code of hospitality and honor, values that would later find purified expression in Islam. To welcome a guest was sacred, to protect a neighbor was noble, and to keep one's word was a mark of manhood. The Arabs were wild and proud, but they possessed courage, eloquence, and deep respect for lineage and loyalty. The larger world around Arabia. While Arabia was divided, the world beyond was in turmoil. The Byzantine and Sasanian empires, the two superpowers of the time, had been at war for decades. Their conflict had weakened both sides. The Byzantines represented Christianity, but it was a faith deeply divided into sections. The Sasanians followed Zoroastrianism, worshipping fire and light, but their religion too had grown distant from its original purity. Both empires were exhausted by greed and war, their people yearning for spiritual renewal. Humanity, in short, was restless. Across continents, men had built temples, empires, and philosophies, but peace of heart was missing. Moral corruption had spread even in places of learning. The poor were crushed under the weight of rulers and priests. The ancient messages of prophets had been distorted by politics and pride. The world stood at the edge of an age that desperately needed guidance. A renewal of divine truth. The Year of the Elephant. In the year 570 CE, an event occurred that Arabs would remember for generations. The Year of the Elephant. A powerful Abyssinian governor named Abraha, ruling from Yemen, built a magnificent church and wanted all Arabs to abandon the Kaaba and worship there. When the Arabs refused, he decided to destroy the Kaaba itself. He marched with a mighty army leading elephants, beasts the Arabs had never seen before, toward Makkah. But as they approached, something extraordinary happened. According to historical and religious accounts, the army was struck down by flocks of birds carrying stones, and Abraha's forces were destroyed before they could reach the Kaaba. This event became a sign, a moment that hinted that the Kaaba and the land around it were under divine protection. That same year, in the city of Makkah, a child was born into the Banu Hashim clan, a child whose name would be remembered till the end of time, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace be upon him. The birth of a new dawn. Muhammad, PBUH, was born into a world torn between pride and despair, between light and darkness. His father, Abdullah, had passed away before his birth, and his mother, Amina, would pass away when he was very young. Raised first by his grandfather Abdul Muttalib and later by his uncle Abu Talib, he grew up seeing every aspect of Arabian life, its beauty and its brutality. From his earliest days, he was known for his honesty, kindness, and reflection. People called him Al-Amin, the trustworthy. He worked as a shepherd, traveled with caravans, and observed the world with quiet wisdom. He saw the idols people prayed to, the injustices they committed, and the emptiness in their hearts. But he said nothing yet. The time for revelation had not come, but the world was already preparing for it. Conclusion: the world awaited a message. By the late 6th century, Arabia stood at a crossroads. Its trade was thriving, but its soul was empty. Empires surrounded it, but none had brought justice or peace. In that desolate yet vibrant land, a man was growing, a man who would one day stand on a mountain and call his people to the worship of one God. The revelation was near. The night of ignorance was about to end. And in the silence of the Arabian desert, history itself was holding its breath. In the stillness of a desert night, a man withdrew from the noise of the world, seeking solitude in the Cave of Hira. The city below, Makkah, slept under the stars, unaware that history itself was about to awaken. The 40th year of his life had arrived, and with it, a destiny long written. In that silence came a voice that would echo forever. Read. It was the beginning of revelation, 610 CE, the dawn of prophethood. This moment in the cave changed not only his life but altered the course of humanity. The message was simple yet revolutionary: there is no God but one God, the creator of all. In a society bound by idols, lineage, and pride, this call to pure monotheism struck deep. It challenged the very fabric of Makkah, where power, wealth, and tribal loyalty reigned above truth. The prophet, PBUH, began his mission quietly, first sharing the message with those closest to him. His wife Khadija R.A. was the first to believe, followed by his cousin Ali R.A., his friend Abu Bakr R.A., and his servant Zayd R.A. The early believers gathered in secret, reciting the words of revelation in hushed tones, their hearts trembling with faith. For 3 years, the message spread quietly, touching hearts through compassion and character rather than force. But once it was made public, the calm of Makkah turned into a storm. The Quraysh, who held dominance over the city and its sacred sanctuary, saw this new faith as a direct threat to their authority and their gods. They mocked, insulted, and ridiculed him. Yet the message continued to spread. The poor, the oppressed, the slaves, those ignored by society, found hope in his words. Islam became a voice for the voiceless, a light in a city of shadows. But the elites grew restless. They launched campaigns of slander, economic boycotts, and even physical assaults. For the Prophet and his followers, the trials grew harsher with each passing year. Still, their faith remained unshaken. The years of hardship. The Quraysh declared a total social and economic boycott on the Muslims and the clan of Banu Hashim. No one was to trade with them, marry them, or help them. The believers were forced to live in isolation in a narrow valley, Shirbi Abi Talib. For nearly 3 years, hunger and deprivation became their constant companions. Children cried from starvation, and the nights echoed with their weeping. Yet amidst this suffering, the resolve of the Prophet and his companions only grew stronger. After the boycott ended, tragedy struck. In a short time, the Prophet lost 2 of his greatest supporters, his beloved wife Khadija, R.A., and his uncle Abu Talib. Their deaths marked one of the most painful years of his life, later known as the Year of Sorrow. With their loss, the opposition intensified. The streets of Makkah grew hostile, even daily life became perilous. Seeking a new place for the message to flourish, the Prophet journeyed to the nearby city of Taif. But instead of welcome, he was met with stones and insults. Bloodied and exhausted, he found shade under a tree, praying not for revenge, but for guidance and mercy for those who attacked him. That night, as the world seemed to turn away, a new sign of hope appeared, the event of Hijrah and Miraj. It was a miraculous night journey where the Prophet was taken from the sacred mosque in Makkah to the farthest mosque in Jerusalem, and from there ascended through the heavens. It was both a spiritual elevation and a reaffirmation of his mission. New light from the north. While Makkah rejected him, hearts elsewhere began to open. During the pilgrimage season, people from Yathrib, a city to the north, met the Prophet and heard his message. Unlike the Quraysh, they listened. They saw in Islam a path that could end their tribal wars and unite their divided society. In secret, small groups from Yathrib pledged their allegiance. These were the pledges of Aqaba. The first pledge was a commitment to faith and good conduct. The second pledge went further. It was a promise to protect the Prophet as they would their own families. It was the spark of a new beginning. The city of Yathrib would soon become Madinah al-Munawwara, the enlightened city. The migration. As the pressure in Makkah reached its peak, the Quraysh conspired to kill the Prophet. Each tribe was to send one warrior so that the blame would be shared among them all. But divine guidance intervened. On that fateful night, the Prophet, PBUH, left his home quietly reciting verses of protection. His cousin Ali, R.A., remained behind in his bed to mislead the assassins. Together with his loyal companion Abu Bakr, R.A., the Prophet set out toward Yathrib. Their path was dangerous. Enemies pursued them from all sides. For 3 days they hid in the Cave of Hira as the search parties passed nearby. At one point, the enemy trackers came so close that one step more would have revealed them. Yet the Prophet calmed his companions, saying, "Do not be afraid, for Allah is with us." From that cave, a new chapter of history began. The migration, Hijrah, was not an escape. It was a transition from persecution to purpose. When they finally reached the outskirts of Yathrib, the people welcomed them with songs and tears of joy. The city had found its light, the foundation of a new society. In Medina, the Prophet's first act was to build the mosque, Masjid an-Nabawi. It was more than a place of prayer. It became the heart of the new community, a center of learning, justice, and leadership. Next came the Constitution of Medina, a groundbreaking social charter that united Muslims, Jews, and other tribes under one civic framework. It established rights, responsibilities, and mutual protection, something unseen in Arabia before. The Prophet also created bonds of brotherhood between the migrants, Muhajirin, and the residents of Medina, Ansar. These ties were not symbolic. They shared their homes, wealth, and lives, becoming one family of faith. Slowly, a new society emerged, built not on lineage or wealth, but on belief, justice, and compassion. A dawn of hope. The years of pain in Makkah had not been in vain. They were the foundation upon which this new society was built. From the deserts of persecution rose a city of peace, where the call to prayer would echo freely for the first time. The Prophet's mission had survived every trial, every loss, and every obstacle. Now in Medina, Islam would grow, not in secret but in the open light of a new dawn. This was the turning point of human history, The moment when faith transformed from an idea whispered in a cave to a civilization that would one day reach across the world.